Hi, I'm Mitchell Ringos. Welcome to Word for Word, where we offer you an in-depth look at some of our interviews with newsmakers from across the region. You'll have the opportunity to hear word for word how they responded to the news of the day. The Thunder Bay Public Library held its third of 4 community consultation meetings recently regarding its draft facilities plan. It took place at the historic Brodie Library, where there are questions about whether the branch will continue to operate after the plan is finalized.
Can you maybe speak to one of the specific things that came up tonight? It's not Brodie specific, but there was a woman who said she's a little worried that libraries are moving away from physical copies of novels, of nonfiction. Can you maybe reiterate what you kind of responded to her for that?
Yeah, so literacy and knowledge are the core of what the library do. So we're not moving away from that in any way, shape, or form. A lot of what the conversation about is how do we deliver that in a better way, in a more modern way, in a way that fits with community needs. So we'll always have books, we'll always have magazines, our ebooks are relatively new. Advancements in our website should make it much easier to access. But I think an important part of the conversation is all of the aspects of knowledge and literacy that we need to provide. So we gain knowledge through conversations like that were happening tonight. We gain it from learning from elders. Children get it from play and interacting. So the library needs to evolve and be a different knowledge sharer in our community, not just a provider of books, but recognizing that programming, services, and our physical collections is all of part of what the library delivers to the community.
Are there any dominant themes that, I know you said with the survey results, so it was a bit of a mix. Are there any dominant themes that have come out of these meetings from your perspective?
Yeah, so there's a lot of really interesting points of inquiry we're getting from the public. It's very clear that people are really eager to learn. When they hear more of the details of what the Central Library involves, people are getting really engaged. So it's a difficult concept to grasp in the abstract. Once people sink their teeth in it and hear the specifics, a lot of people are getting really energized. They like the idea of partnerships and being able to deliver more. So the library being able to provide space that is not just for the library, but for other community groups and partnerships, so we can be more together than we can be apart. And I think we also see the appetite for neighborhood branches. And so we saw that in a lot of the questions, we see that in the survey, and in a really interesting way, we see the appetite for spending. So with the questions, with the engagement from the survey, all of that data will be fully coming out in the business case, but we see people are willing to pay for quality, they're willing to pay for their library service, and it really comes down to dollars and cents at the end. So when we know and have really good data about how much the community values it, and not in an abstract way, but hey, I would actually be willing to pay X dollars more on my taxes if I knew it was going to this really interesting library vision. That's the really big takeaway for me, because at the end of the day, all of our organizations run on kind of our public engagement and also on the finances, and to have those two things come together in this unique way is something really special.
I know you said before there are these options on the table. Your preference is to not see any branches close. Do the results of the public consultation so far make you more optimistic, I guess, that there's a message from the community that they also don't want to see branches closed?
I think there is. It's a little bit too early to tell. Our survey is still open for another week. We still have one more significant public engagement session. But from the information that we've got so far, there really does seem to be an appetite for a bigger, better library system. That when push comes to shove, people want really good libraries. They see the value it is in terms of providing education for our kids, meeting space for youth, a place for our seniors to be safe, adult programming. The full range is on offer, and when it's spelled out to people and people understand the lifelong benefits the library has to the community, people are willing to pay for it, and they want to see that investment being made. Just like we've seen investments in other city services, the library right now is on top of their mind. And when we put that question to them, like, how much are you willing to pay to get this? The answers are very promising. So we're really excited to see the final results and to be able to present that data to council and have them make that final determination on what type of library service is most appropriate for our community and how much are we as a city going to spend on this foundational piece of social and physical infrastructure.
Okay, so I know I texted you in advance just because I didn't want to kind of lob a bombshell at you at all, but I assume there's been some thought put into there is the possibility of divesting from County Fair as well as Brodie. Obviously, County Fair is rented, so I think there's fewer implications there, but Has there been any discussion about what would happen if, I mean, this is a historic building, right? Has there been any discussion about what would happen if the library were to leave Brodie to this space?
Yeah, so it's a little bit too early right now. We've talked about it internally about how the community would react. We know that talking with over 45 local community-based organizations, that in the worst case scenario, people would adapt. People would visit a place like a central library if Brodie were to close. I mean, I think it would be a loss for the neighborhood, but not a big of a loss as if we got stuck in the status quo. So we know we need an evolution. We know we need change. That can be hard and the transition can be difficult, but we see the community appetite for that. And I think as to what happens with the physical building, that'll really be up to the city and the library board. So if the city, as city council, decides that they're unwilling to fund library presence at Brodie, then it'll be part of a negotiation around what happens with the building. Does it go to the city, to other community partners? Does it just go up for sale for those funds to be recycled for other purposes? That really will ultimately be city council's decision in tandem with the public library board.
Okay, and that's, I guess, where we get back to the kind of weird ownership structure where the board would also have a say there.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, I guess the last thing for me is just like, I know there's been some concern in the community, at least that I've seen online and even just in person, some people mentioning this when it's been discussed, the impact, and you touched on it a bit, the impact to vulnerable population who sometimes rely on the library as a safe space, a place to come in, get warm if they might not have other sheltered access services, internet access, all that stuff. I know you've spoken passionately about that too. So like, what are your biggest concerns if Brodie were to close along those lines, and what has kind of given you the peace of mind that, you know, it might not be ideal, but it would be workable?
Yeah, so it's obviously a complex question, right? What happens to our most marginalized and most vulnerable population if the branch they tend to use the most isn't a library branch anymore? And it's a tremendously difficult and complex question. So one of the things that I rely on is our community partners. So speaking with over 45 organizations, many dealing directly and exclusively with those most marginalized and most vulnerable people, I am given confidence that that there's an adaptation mechanism in place, that those service providers will step up to help fill the gap, and that we can still provide meaningful service to that population through the central branch, which isn't really too far away. And I think that's tied in with really good public transit access. So we'd want to ensure that if that scenario went forward, we work with transit to make sure that it's accessible, that people can get there. We work with community partners to make sure there isn't a gap in services. And at the end of the day, we're still really hoping that we get to maintain a neighborhood branch at Brodie. I think it's one of the things that we can easily jump to conclusions, and we don't want to say, you know, yep, it's gone and, you know, so long. I think it's an incredibly valuable building and facility, especially for those most in need. And I think the risk is getting trapped in the status quo, where we're not really meeting any of our patrons' needs to the best of our abilities and to the need that's expected of us in the community. So for example, in the first scenario where we maintain a presence at Brodie, we're actually able to hyper-focus on the local community because we have a central branch that's taking care of the city as a whole, and we can say, what does the community around Brodie really need? And that's probably focusing on services that are more utilized by low-income and marginalized patrons, things like public access computers, public meeting rooms, our Indigenous knowledge collection, and doubling down on what we know the local demand is, as opposed to having things like our local history collection, which is a citywide service that essentially got stuck at Brodie because of our inherited history. And so we're really hoping to have a dynamic library service that operates citywide, that provides the right services in the right place at the right time to the right population.
For the start of Pride Month, the Lakehead Public School Board celebrated the Pride flag that has been flying all year in front of its local board office to acknowledge and embrace the differences which make us all unique. The flag flying ceremony was held with guest speakers. Ellen Chambers was there for the Lakehead Board, along with representatives from Thunder Pride Association and the Thunder Bay Indigenous Friendship Center. This flag was already up today, but just as a school board, can you kind of just talk a little bit about why it's so important for Lakehead Public Schools to have this flag raised throughout the year and continuing going forward?
Well, primarily and always it's about our students. It's extremely important for a student who may self-identify as lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, two-spirit, intersex, and on. They may not know exactly how to identify themselves. They may feel different. They may automatically know that they are not heterosexual. All that aside, it's extraordinarily important for children to be seen, to know that people see them, and to know that we will also, in the words of a parent, protect them while they're at school. That's our job. Our job is for every child to be safe in our schools, and it's also our job so that other students understand. And I've always said this, and I know this from personal experience in my advocacy and activism in my life, is that if you give it to the kids, they don't have a problem. And they've proven that to us over and over again. We have kids in our schools that will self-correct other kids if they're saying things that are inappropriate when it comes around identity. And that did not happen, absolutely, when I was a student, which was too many years ago to even think about, but even not that long ago. When my kids went to school, it wasn't like that. And so it doesn't seem like a lot to other people, and it may seem like a big deal to some people. Why are we putting this flag up? It's about identity and safety and human rights. So that's why we do it. It's the kids and our staff as well, of course.
And speaking about the kids, obviously later today they're going to be talking at Hammersholt. Obviously there's a lot to advocating in schools. There's a lot of steps to get to the point where you want to be, but as a student nowadays, just seeing that flag coming into school every day, do you think that not only helps them walk in knowing that they're going to feel safe, but feel included?
I absolutely know that. There's no question of that. I remember the first time I saw the pride flag flying, I cried. And I know that still does that to parents. You heard Scotia speak here today that her children are accepted and safe in the school. It's a really important thing. Yeah, it's big. And even if a child isn't saying anything to a parent, and that's the thing about the community, is that sometimes children are not safe in their own homes, which is unfortunate, but that isn't also a truth as well, because their parents may not be accepting, and they may not know that they will be accepting if they come out.
And obviously, the start of Pride Month, it is June 1st. So how do you think it feels for the students and for the school to celebrate today with the flag raising, but then the rest of the month, a lot of activities for the students to get out and feel welcome?
As far as I know, children really love celebrating, and they really enjoy, they understand what that rainbow flag stands for. When the children come to school as very little, rainbow flag means difference and family, because families are different, and we honor the ages of our children when we talk about these things. But yeah, the children really do enjoy it.
Anything else you'd like to add?
No, just thanks. I'm glad you're here.
I know this ceremony was supposed to take part tomorrow as part of the flag raising, but starting June, it is Pride Month now. How important is it not only for the community but for a school board to have this flag raised?
It's so important because the youth who are members of the 2S LGBTQIA plus community, that's a lot of the time when you figure out that you are members of the community, especially during puberty and growing up and figuring out where you fit in social circles and everything. It's good to have a inclusive and equitable, fostering, loving community with your teachers and school board staff. So to show that we're all accepting, and the school board and all the school boards in Thunder Bay accept you for who you are and love you no matter what, and just want to foster you grow into the beautiful person you can be, that's just a wonderful, wonderful start to the month.
And how important is this not only for the community, but obviously locally here in town? There has been some controversy recently with protests, especially at Movati and the trans community. So how important is this message right now?
This is extremely important to show that you can be safe and you can be who you are in your genuine self with respect where you are, and people who can't respect you for who you are need to take a step back and learn a little lesson of love, peace, and respect from our kids, and grow with that.
And obviously the start of Pride Month, how excited are you for the rest of the festivities throughout the month starting here today?
Oh my goodness, there's so many. There's so many festivities all month. It's so wonderful to see the range of festivities too. There's high-end fancy galas, and there's more like business-orientated workshops and talks. There's lots of community talks, lots of family and like free events, and with just the being able to have the march, so we can still have our protest and solidarity kind of march that's historically always taken place, along with having now our second year of our very large street festival. It's just going to be so much fun, and then ending it off with the Thunder Bay Indigenous Friendship Center's Two-Spirit Powwow at the end, which last year was a super really good fun blast. It's just so nice to see so much diversity and culture coming together for the 2S LGBTQIA+ community.
And lastly, obviously before, many years ago, flag not raised in school, times have changed. The flag's now sitting up mostly every year. Where do you think we are currently in the community, and what do you think we need to continue to do to push for a more inclusive community?
I believe it's always going to be a struggle with anyone who is seen different. And that's just a part of just still continuing fostering the respect and be yourself, be your genuine self, and respect people for who they are, not what they look like, not what's in their pants, or who they love, because that's none of anybody's business except for your own. But as a community for Thunder Bay is very, as much as there's small parts that have hate and it fosters online mostly, Thunder Bay is still a very respectful and welcoming community, and always open to welcome everybody in, so we can make it just even more welcoming and awesome.
Anything else you'd like to add? Just outside of town, the dirt track racing season got underway at the Thunder City Speedway, with the first races of 2023 being held out in Oliver Papoonch. And just as the cars started rounding the track, the Municipal Council voted to extend the end time for the Speedway from 10 p.m. to 10:30 each night.
Todd, how did night one go here at Thunder City?
It went good. We had a good crowd out for sure. Good car count. The track was excellent. Great racing for sure. Yeah, it was a good night.
All right. Now we had some pretty close races, or at least two out of the three features. So that's what you're looking for. Tell me a little bit about what you're looking for.
Well, that is what we would like to see every week, is some close racing for sure, and see different guys win. So our local guys did well here. We had Brandon Kopp come in from Wisconsin. He did really well too. Cole Chernowski did good. So I mean, our local guys do good all the time.
Okay, terrific. I understand that Oliver Papoonch extended the noise bylaw to 10:30 after tonight. So tell us a little bit about that, how that's going to help things here.
Well, it should help our show for sure. That's what we need, is if we're coming close to the curfew, a little extra time at the end. With the car count, we need that extra time for sure. So I think it's going to help. Tonight went well. We had the little incident there which delayed it a bit, but otherwise we would have been just fine here for sure. So we had to cut the one feature out, but I think that's okay. We'll make that up. The Hornets deserve another feature. So.
Thanks for joining us for today's edition of Word for Word. We'll be back next week with more interviews from across the Northwest.